Okay, let's unpack this. Today we're taking a deep dive into a really unique source. It's an excerpt from this radio program called Past Week, Next Week.
Right. And it's not your typical news show at all.
No, not at all. They actually call it a comedy show. It's all about, quote, goofiness, fellowship, and fun.
And they specifically say it aims to be nothing inspirational, deep, or motivating, which is kind of funny in itself.
It really is. But here's the interesting part for you, our listener. What happens when we apply our, deep dive lens to something that's basically designed just for laughs? Can we actually pull out some real knowledge, some insights?
Well, that's exactly what's so fascinating here, because even in stuff that seems really lighthearted, you can often find these threads, connections to bigger things like societal trends or personal stuff people go through, even, surprisingly, the political scene. So our mission today really is to pull out those details, those moments that kind of make you go, aha, and, connect them to the broader picture, but do it respectfully, keeping in mind the show's playful spirit.
Right. Respect the goofiness?
Exactly. So we'll explore everything from like how they celebrate holidays to Super Bowl commercials, believe it or not, and yeah, even some unexpectedly serious political talk that pops up.
Okay, let's jump in then. Let's get into the world of Past Week, Next Week. So the show apparently kicks off with a tradition. They play a song that symbolizes the past week. And this time they chose Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers' American Girl.
Okay, classic choice.
Yeah, and they linked it to Independence Day, which makes sense, but also to the fact that they had special female guests on. Now, for a show aiming for nothing deep, picking a song like that, tied to the Fourth and their guests, it feels like there's something more there, doesn't it?
That's a fantastic point. It really is. It immediately signals that even, light content can resonate culturally. By tying American Girl to the holiday and their specific guests, Jane and Whitney.
Chris's wife and Boogie's wife, right?
Exactly. They create this immediate layer of relatability, maybe even a subtle kind of shared American feeling, but like in a fun, not heavy way.
Yeah, it's like fostering that fellowship they talk about.
Precisely. Through those shared cultural things. And speaking of connection, yeah, we meet Jane and Whitney. And we get these little glimpses, right? And Jane making sausage gravy and breakfast potatoes.
That's delicious.
Doesn't it? And Whitney's really funny aversion to eggs, like the texture, the taste, the look, everything. She even admits to using egg allergy as an excuse sometimes.
Oh, wow. But she can eat them baked in things.
Yeah, apparently that's okay. It's these little quirks, these everyday things that ground the show. It's how they build that bond, that almost like parasocial thing with the audience.
Right. It's not about grand ideas. It's about shared kind of weird human stuff.
It's exactly connection through quirks.
And that shared experience thing, it definitely carried over into their past week, next week employees pool party.
Ah, yes, the pool bar.
This pool, apparently, it's got a history leaking since like 2010.
A long time.
Yeah, and they just got it fixed with turf. And Chris compared the turf, humorously, to the Brady Bunch backyard.
That's a great visual.
It is.
Yeah.
And it's just a perfect example of how their regular lives just bleed into the show. Apparently last year, the pool construction actually messed with listener participation somehow.
Really?
Yeah. So it just shows how these personal stories really become the fabric of the show.
And beyond the pool, their week sounded pretty packed. Jane and Chris watched Nona's on Netflix.
Oh, yeah.
And they were talking about how amazing Susan Sarandon looks at 78, which prompted Chris to do a Damn It, Janet Rocky Horror reference.
Okay.
It's not just a random story, though, is it? It kind of shows how the stuff we watch becomes part of our conversations, how we talk about aging, even.
True. And Chris's oldest daughter had a birthday party.
Yeah, a Survivor-themed game at her house, complete with tribes, challenges, voting people off.
Wow, they went all out.
Sounds like it. It shows how those big pop culture things filter down into, like, family fun, like creating these unique memories.
Yeah, definitely. And it wasn't just home stuff either. Chris and Jane went out for Dave Tish's 72nd birthday to a place called Grosso's. Said the food was great, but the Kansas City drinking water was not good.
See, even during a celebration, you get those little, like, relatable complaints, the everyday annoyances.
Right. And meanwhile, Boogie's talking about this new bridge project downtown, connecting Kansas to Missouri near Kemper Arena.
Okay, local development.
Yeah, calls it a party spot. And apparently Dave Smith, who's Monica McAtee's brother, is an investor. It's like a little peek into how personal connections and local projects shape the social scene around them.
And Paul's week sounded, well, challenging. He missed the show the week before.
Yeah, helping his daughter move.
Right, and the movers just didn't show up. Total nightmare. He had to scramble, found some guy named Dylan on Facebook Marketplace.
Oh, man, the stress. But he sorted it.
Yeah, successfully. And now both his youngest and oldest daughters are staying with him, apparently. Plus, he had his own little drama with a flooded studio.
What happened there?
Clogged gutter. But he fixed it, like this personal victory, you know? And his plan was to celebrate with brunch, Bloody Marys, mimosas.
Nice. Deserved, probably.
Totally. It just captures that feeling, right? Overcoming those little household disasters. It's stuff that really builds that connection, that empathy with listeners.
So shifting from the personal stuff more into pop culture, they talk movies.
Recommendations time.
Boogie was really pushing F1 with Brad Pitt. Said it was like probably worth going to the theater for.
High praise these days.
Yeah, and he compared Pitt to a middle-aged Robert Redford.
Wow, okay. That says a lot, doesn't it, about like lasting star power and what we look for in movies.
Definitely. And then Paul talked about seeing Sinners on HBO.
Oh, yeah.
What's that? He called it awesome and weird, a vampire movie, apparently. He compared it to From Dusk Till Dawn.
Oh, okay. Interesting. So genre bending.
Totally. He mentioned it had like mobster elements, but also social commentary. Stuff about racial and ethnic groups living together, and then the supernatural stuff on top.
So it's doing a lot. It kind of highlights how movies now often mix all these things together, right? To create something unexpected, something that makes you think.
Yeah, and it shows the different tastes, even just between the hosts, which probably mirrors their audience, you know?
Good point. Very diverse interests.
Okay, but here's where entertainment, like, really collided with their actual lives.
Whitney's story.
Ah, the State Farm commercial.
Yeah, she auditioned for a Super Bowl commercial. Apparently her son Gabe didn't get a part, but they emailed her directly.
Wow, that's amazing.
It is, but is this maybe pushing it a bit? Like, is it just self-promotion, or is there something we can actually, get from this for our deep dive? That's a fair question, but I think, actually, if you dig in a bit, it's a brilliant example of how media, even advertising, crashes into real life in weird ways.
How so?
Well, to think about her confusion about the football star Derrick Henry. She didn't know who he was.
Right, some dude named Derrick Henry.
Exactly. And her making fun of herself for being a bandwagon Chiefs fan, and her observations about Jake from State Farm.
Said he looked taller, kind of jacked, but had let it go a little bit.
Yeah, it's those little authentic details. They make this huge, polished thing like the Super Bowl feel, I don't know, grounded, relatable.
Yeah, humanizing the spectacle.
Yeah, exactly. It shows how even these brief brushes with fame become stories we share. Plus, she mentioned they told her to wear purple, even though State Farm and the Chiefs are red.
That's weirdly specific.
And she's a trainer, apparently. That was her role. She said Derrick Henry was massive, but really soft-spoken and humble. And she turned down more filming because of her regular job. Patrick Mahomes was filming later that week.
So just a little snapshot of that whole world.
A very human snapshot.
It really seems like their lives are just constantly intersecting with entertainment, doesn't it?
It does seem that way.
They talked about wanting to see Adam Sandler's comedy tour, You're My Best Friend, and the upcoming Earth, Wind, and Fire concert, and their strategy, wait for cheap tickets.
Yeah. Very relatable strategy. It shows how, live music, comedy, it's still a big part of how we socialize, but we're practical about it, too.
Totally. And then this whole thing about Steve Burns, the original host of Dew's Clues.
Oh, yeah. Launching an adult podcast called Alive.
And the hosts joked he ripped off their show's concept.
Which is funny, but it led to this whole nostalgia trip, right?
Yeah. Talking about Barney hate back in the day. College kids shooting and burning Barney dolls. Religious groups opposing him.
Wow, I vaguely remember that. Intense.
Totally. And other shows, too, like Bear in the Big Blue House, Yo Gabba Gabba, classic cartoons like Underdog, Super Friends.
It's like a little micro-history of kids' TV, isn't it? And how society reacts to it, sometimes in really strong ways. Like the whole Barney thing became a cultural phenomenon.
Yeah, absolutely. And shifting from kids' shows to, well, the current superhero universe, Taylor Swift.
Ah, yes. Her surprise performance at Tight End University.
Co-founded by Travis Kelce. Yeah. Celebrating getting her master's back.
That's such a perfect storm, isn't it? Music, sports, celebrity power, business ownership, all converging right there.
It really is. And then on the DC side of things, James Gunn announcing a new Wonder Woman movie, but Gal Gadot isn't coming back.
Right. That sparked a debate, didn't it, about the core DC pillars.
Yeah, they listed Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, and Supergirl.
But they debated Supergirl. Should she be a pillar, or should it be like Green Lantern or the Flash instead?
It's more than just fan chat, isn't it? It kind of reflects how we're always renegotiating these cultural things, these big stories. Who counts? Who's essential?
Absolutely. It's about how canons get reevaluated. And Paul mentioning he plans to see the new Superman movie early using Amazon Prime.
With Rachel Brosnahan as Lois Lane.
Right. That just speaks to how we even get our entertainment now. It's all changing.
Okay, let's shift gears here, because the show took a pretty serious turn when they got into politics, which is kind of surprising given the goofiness mandate.
It is. It shows that even a show like this can become a space for talking about some really heavy, contentious stuff.
So they played a clip sent in by Boogie, and this clip alleged that the Trump administration passed some big, beautiful bill that had, like, secret Medicaid cuts hidden inside. And it claimed there were plans to suspend elections by creating chaos, maybe leading to martial law.
Okay, wow, that's a lot. Heavy allegations.
Exactly. And the hosts reacted, right.
Yeah.
They brought up Josh Hawley apparently flip-flopping, voting for a bill he said he opposed, maybe without reading it.
And Mark Alford's concern about the deficit was mentioned, too.
Yeah. And Boogie connected this whole idea to something happening in Miami, where they pushed back city elections by a year.
Suggesting it could be part of a bigger pattern?
Kind of.
Yeah.
Like a trend of maybe not being straight about political processes and cutting services through, like, bureaucratic red tape.
Right, obfuscation.
The clip also argued this bill would, quote, devastate the lowest income folks, while billionaires' taxes go way down.
A common critique of certain tax policies.
And it made the argument that healthcare costs for people with insurance would go up because they'd end up covering the uninsured who fled emergency rooms.
The cost-shifting argument.
Yeah. And that politicians need to frame this for, quote, selfish America. Now, obviously, we're just reporting what was in the source.
Absolutely. It's crucial. We're not endorsing these claims. What's important here for our deep dive is seeing how this show, this goofy show, becomes a place where the hosts process and interpret these really complex political arguments for their listeners.
Right. It reflects those widespread anxieties people have about, transparency in government, economic fairness.
Exactly. All bubbling up in this unexpected place.
And speaking of politics, new developments, the announcement about Elon Musk starting his own party, the America Party.
Oh, yeah. Focused on fiscal responsibility. That's definitely a new twist in the landscape.
What was the reaction on the show?
Well, Whitney was pretty skeptical. She basically likened him to Trump, saying he doesn't give a cess about anybody else except for himself. Pretty blunt.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. But despite that, there was also this kind of hope expressed that maybe this new party could split the far-right vote and maybe help others unify.
Interesting. So cynicism and maybe a little strategic hope mixed together.
Exactly. It's a little window into how people react to these new political things. Shows that fragmentation we're seeing everywhere.
They also got into local politics, but with potentially bigger implications. New York City mayor primary.
Right. Where a candidate described as a Democrat socialist won. They called him Zoran the Great, or Sauron Man Morty.
Okay. Unusual names. But this apparently caused some alarm among establishment Democrats.
Because of his platform, presumably.
Yeah.
Making things more affordable. Things like free bus services, government-run grocery stores in areas that need them.
And critics immediately called it communist.
Predictably, perhaps. But the hosts defended it, didn't they?
Yeah, they argued these ideas would actually help essential workers, and that the criticism kind of exposes a lack of care for, poor people.
So it really highlights that tension, right, between the ideological labels people throw around and the actual practical policies being proposed.
Yeah. What one person calls radical, another sees as just, necessary, or compassionate, especially when talking about supporting people who are struggling.
It shows how those fundamental values about society's responsibilities really come out, even on a show that's mostly about fun.
And then some really stark commentary emerged from the source material, this alligator Alcatraz comment.
Yeah, a proposal, apparently, to put immigrants in facilities with alligators.
It's just unbelievable. And the quote that came up, "The cruelty is the point."
That's a powerful phrase. Used to suggest the intent behind certain harsh policies.
Right. And they mentioned the inconsistency, too, like making exceptions for certain immigrant workers, but then revoking those exceptions later.
It's jarring. And how does a show built on goofiness even deliver that kind of sharp critique.
That's what I was wondering.
I think it's the contrast, actually. By putting these really stark, sometimes absurd policy ideas right next to the lighter stuff, it actually makes the impact stronger.
Amplifies it.
Yeah. And that phrase, the cruelty is the point, whether they said it directly or just brought up comments that imply it, it forces you to look critically at policies that seem designed to punish more than anything else.
So the show kind of becomes this channel for serious observations using humor and their personalities to make tough subjects, well, maybe not easier, but more accessible.
Accessible but still impactful. Yeah, I think that's right.
Okay, let's move on to the news quiz segment they did.
Right, testing their knowledge.
Hosts and guests answering questions about recent events. It's a pretty standard radio bit, but what does it tell us about this show?
Well, it tells us that even with the nothing deep disclaimer, there's definitely an expectation that everyone's kind of keeping up with things, right? There's a baseline of shared cultural knowledge, current events awareness.
What kind of stuff did they cover?
All sorts. The Senate budget bill vote, Lisa Murkowski's role, and her criticizing the bill after voting for it.
Interesting.
The FBI looking at Jeffrey Epstein videos. The Sean Diddy Combs verdict.
Guilty of prostitution, but not sex trafficking.
Right, which led to some speculation on the show about, the prosecution or maybe the influence of money. Also, the French air traffic controllers strike.
Okay, so global stuff, too.
Yeah. And Harvard's Title IX violation over anti-Semitism claims, plus Bono writing a poem for the shuttered U.S. Agency for International Development, USAI.
Wow, Bono. And U.S. cuts. That's serious.
Yeah.
Very dire predictions about increased deaths mentioned. So this quiz, it's not just trivia, it's a snapshot of major events. And it subtly encourages listeners to engage with the news, maybe.
And gives the hosts the chance to offer their take on it all.
Exactly. Their unique, unfiltered commentary on everything from legal verdicts to humanitarian crises.
After all that heavy news, they shifted to something much more personal. These 10 thoughtful and revealing questions for the guests.
Yeah, and this is where that fellowship aspect really shone through, I think. Some really powerful moments.
Like Jane sharing how cancer and device changed her.
Profound stuff. Saying it helped her learn to advocate for herself, set boundaries. She even called cancer a gift.
That takes incredible perspective.
It really does. Shows amazing resilience. And then Whitney's story.
From high school, about the track meet.
Yeah, being really upset about it, only to find out her best friend's father had just passed away. Talk about a lesson in humility and perspective, right?
Yeah. Heavy stuff learned young. And Paul chimed in with his wife Nancy's funny story about meeting him. Saw the most handsome guy there, but went out with Paul instead.
Huh. Keeps it light, too.
Yeah, it's that mix. These aren't just stories. They're reflections on resilience, empathy, how we make sense of our lives, often with humor.
And when they asked about feeling most like themselves,
Both Jane and Whitney said it was in their relationships with their husbands. Feeling free, able to be authentic.
that says a lot about partnership, doesn't it? Finding that space to be truly yourself.
It really does. And then the perfect day question that was revealing too.
What were their answers?
Jane's ideal day. Waking up early, coffee on the screen porch, walking a trail with Chris, ideally in Colorado. And crucially, no emotional labor.
No emotional labor. That's specific. Speaks volumes.
Doesn't it? Whitney's perfect day was simpler, on a beach, or just trying different restaurants around Kansas City. Pure pleasure seeking.
Food exploration.
Yeah. And Paul's, having good friends over for brunch by his pool, community and relaxation.
So different priorities. Peace, pleasure, community.
Exactly. These simple, perfect days tell you so much about what people truly value. Often it's those small, personal moments. Connection, peace, enjoyment.
So wrapping this all up, what does it mean? We started looking at this show past week, next week, that literally tells you it's just about goofiness, fellowship, and fun.
Right. Nothing deep.
But as we unpacked it, we found all these layers, didn't we? Really personal reflections, surprisingly sharp political commentary, even profound insights about just navigating life,
Yeah.
often hidden in the most mundane or funny bits.
Yeah, it really makes you wonder, doesn't it? And this is a question for you, the listener. How often do you find that it's the simple stuff, the casual media, maybe even just everyday chats, that actually hold the most revealing truths about society, about our own lives, about what really matters?
It's a good reminder to look beyond the obvious surface, maybe. Find the meaning in unexpected places.
Definitely. Learn to read between the lines, even the laugh lines.
And just like the hosts shared their plans for their next week, maybe it encourages us to look a bit closer at our own coming week, the media we consume. Speaking of which, they did mention plans. Chris is meeting an old colleague about training, his nephew's graduating Air Force basic training.
Uh-huh. Boogie's moving his son into college, looking forward to Mexican Monday at a local bar.
Southside Bar and Grill. And Paul seeing Spinal Tap and Superman.
Busy week for them. And finally, there was the mention of the Greystones.
Oh, yeah. This band of super young, talented kids, like average age 11.
Yeah, doing covers, planning an album, just popped up in the conversation, and it feels like a perfect final thought, actually.
Oh, so?
Well, this incredible talent just emerging unexpectedly from a casual chat, it kind of sums it all up, right? Remarkable things, profound insights, real talent. It can show up anywhere. Sometimes all it takes is a moment of curiosity, maybe a bit of a deep dive, to find it.